Chapter 2. The Reluctant Descent. Rowan packed the way he did everything, methodically, without hurry, each item considered for its weight against its worth. Dried mushrooms in waxed cloth, enough for 6 days if he rationed. The water flask, filled from the rain catch and sealed with a cork his mother had carved from a pine knot. His father's multi-tool, the blades dulled from 20 years of use, but the screwdriver heads still true. A coil of thin rope, a wool blanket rolled tight, and a fire-starting kit in a tin box. The medical encyclopedia sat on the table beside the pack, its bulk a reproach. The thing weighed as much as 3 days of food. He could tear out the relevant pages, but the thought of damaging the book produced a resistance in him that had nothing to do with practicality. He put the whole book in the pack, and his shoulders would have opinions about that later. The wind-up flashlight he clipped to his belt. His father had maintained it for years before him, replacing the LED once with a salvaged unit from a before torch found in a collapsed house 2 ridges over. The mechanism was sound. Rowan had cleaned and oiled it the previous night, the gears meshing with the satisfying precision of things that were made to last and had been cared for by people who understood that nothing could be replaced. He was wrapping the mushrooms in a second layer of cloth when he heard the bedroom door open. Mira stood in the doorway, her coat over her nightclothes, arms folded. She looked at the pack on the table, the supplies laid out in rows, the map on the wall with the flashlight propped beneath it. She looked at Rowan. "I was going to tell you in the morning," he said. "It is the morning." She crossed to the table and sat down across from him. "You have been up all night." "I have been productive all night," Rowan said. "There is a difference." Mira picked up the waxed cloth bundle of mushrooms, tested its weight, set it down. She examined the coil of rope, the fire kit, the blanket roll. Her hands moved over the supplies with the assessing touch of someone who had packed emergency bags before, in another life, when the emergencies were different. "You will need more food than this," she said. "I can forage on the way down," Rowan said. "The lower elevations have edible fungi. You have never foraged below the ridge line." She held up a hand before he could respond. "I am not telling you not to go. I am telling you what I know so that you do not die of something preventable before you reach the place that has the medicine to keep me from dying of something preventable." She got up and went to the storage shelf, came back with a second bundle of dried mushrooms, a packet of ground root flour, and a small clay jar sealed with wax. "Rendered fat," she said, setting the jar down. "For the cold. You have never been below the cloud base, and it is colder and wetter than you think." Rowan set the jar beside the pack. "You have mentioned the cold." Mira raised an eyebrow. "I am mentioning it again." She sat back down and folded her hands on the table. The lamp between them cast her face in warm tones that softened the hollows beneath her cheekbones. She had lost weight, and it showed now in the way her collarbone stood out above the coat's collar, the way her wrists looked narrow against her sleeves. He had catalogued it without processing what it meant. "The fungi below the ridge," Mira said. "The color rules from the plant guide mostly hold, but the species have changed." She turned the clay jar on the table, a slow rotation, not examining it this time, just holding it. "Do not eat anything that pulses faster than your breathing, for that is a sign of high alkaloid content." Rowan repeated it to himself, "Nothing that pulses faster than breathing." Lowlanders barter. Everything has value because everything is scarce. She reached into her coat pocket and set something on the table between them. A small cloth pouch, tied with twine. "Tomato seeds, heirloom strain from before, and I have been saving them for 15 years. Rowan looked at the pouch. 15 years. His mother had been hoarding these seeds since he was 19, waiting for a circumstance dire enough to spend them. "If the clinic still exists, the doctor will want something in exchange," Mira said. "You are good with your hands." Offer that first, and if skill is not enough, offer the seeds, but do not offer them first. What if they do not need anything I can do? Rowan said. Then you find out what they need and you learn to do it. She said this the way she said most things, as a fact about the world, not a suggestion. Your father was not a mechanic before the Opa King. He was studying literature. He learned to build a solar collector from a textbook and 6 months of failure because that was what the situation required. Rowan looked at the pack and at the encyclopedia inside it. I did not know he studied literature. There are many things you do not know about before. Mira's voice carried no reproach. That is not a failing, but it is a condition. She coughed, short and controlled. She pressed her lips together and waited for it to pass. And Rowan watched her manage it the way she managed everything, with discipline and minimal fuss. The cough subsided. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, checked it, and put her hand in her lap. Meridian has walls, she said. 12 meters high, your father said, with guards at the gates. She picked up the mushroom bundle again, not examining it this time, just holding it. Do not argue with the guards. Do not tell them you have never seen a city. Answer their questions and let them process you, for it is their system. Rowan watched her hand return to her lap. You have thought about this. I have thought about this since the first time I coughed blood, which was 3 weeks before you noticed. The words were direct, but the tone was not unkind. She reached across the table and put her hand on his forearm. Her fingers were thin and cool. Stop hovering and go. I did not raise you to watch me die uselessly. Rowan said she was not dying. Not today, she said. Go now, while that is still true. She squeezed his arm once, then withdrew her hand. The light window opens in 4 hours. That gives you time to prepare, not to reconsider. Rowan finished packing in the gray stillness of the pre-window hours. Mira returned to bed but did not sleep. Her breathing came through the thin wall, the rhythm uneven. Interrupted by the shallow catches that preceded coughing fits, she was suppressing through will alone. He added the rendered fat to the pack. The seed pouch went into his coat pocket, where it would stay dry. He tightened the drawstrings and hoisted the pack onto his shoulders. The hard corner of the encyclopedia's binding dug into the small of his back. He shifted the weight, found a position he could sustain, and leaned forward against the pull. The light window opened at 11:17, 4 minutes later than yesterday, and Rowan did not write it in his notebook. He put the notebook in his coat pocket beside the pencil stub and the seeds and stepped outside. Mira stood on the front step. She wore her heavy coat, arms crossed, squinting up at the slow brightening of the sky. The gray-white light settled over the farm, over the terraced rows, over the solar collector his father had built and Rowan had maintained for 22 years. The panels caught the light and held it, tilted at the angle Rowan had calibrated last season, gleaming faintly like dull coins. The east panel's sealant, Rowan said. It needs patching before the next rain. I know how to patch sealant, Mira said. When he started to mention the loose lower left mount bolt, she stopped him. Rowan. Her voice stopped him. I maintained this farm for 6 years before you were old enough to hold a wrench. She looked at him, and her face did something complicated. Not soft, exactly, for Mira did not do soft. But the lines around her eyes shifted, and her mouth pressed into a shape that was not quite a smile and not quite anything else. She stepped forward and put her hand against his cheek. Her palm was dry and rough and warm from the coat pocket. She held it there for 2 seconds, then she turned and walked back inside. Rowan stood on the step. The light window was open, the farm lit in its muted gray-white glow, and the path down the mountain began 20 paces from where he stood. He had walked every meter of that path to the lower ridge, thousands of times, carrying tools and water and harvested potatoes. Beyond the ridge, the path continued into terrain he had never entered. He adjusted his pack straps and walked. The upper path was familiar, each turn and switchback memorized in his legs, if not his mind. He moved at the pace his body knew for loaded descents, steady and unhurried. Placing his feet on the rock shelves and packed earth with the automatic precision of long practice. The farm shrank behind him. The solar collector caught the light window's glow, a bright point on the ridge above, growing smaller with each switchback. At the lower ridge, where the path crossed a saddle between two shoulders of granite, Rowan stopped. He had stood here before many times. This was where he came to check the weather, to scan the lower slopes for movement, to look out at the world below and decide each time that he had no reason to enter it. Below the ridge, the air was different and thicker. The moisture content climbed as the elevation dropped, and he could feel it on his skin. A damp film that the mountain's drier altitude did not produce. The vegetation changed too. Sparse mountain moss gave way to denser growth along the rocks, and in the shadowed places where the light window barely reached, he could see the first traces of color that did not belong to anything he knew. Fungi coated the underside of a boulder in a thin, luminous film, blue-green, and he crouched to look at it. The glow pulsed, slow and steady, a rhythm like breathing but slower. His mother's rule held. He reached out and touched the rock beside the growth, cool and slightly slick beneath his fingers. His shadow fell across the patch and the pulse quickened. So he pulled his hand back, and the rhythm settled to its original pace. He watched it for another 10 seconds, then stood and continued down. The path narrowed below the ridge. The rock grew slick with moisture, and the air smelled different. A wet green scent layered over something darker, something organic and unfamiliar. Mold, maybe the kind that grew where sunlight could not reach to kill it. And sounds he was not used to, dripping, constant, from everywhere and nowhere at once. The faint creak of things growing. Or settling, or both. His mountain had been quiet. But this place was alive in a way that had nothing to do with him. The light window reached its peak and began to fade. As the gray deepened, the fungi along the rocks brightened in response, becoming the primary light source where there had been none. The path was visible as a darker line where boots had worn the growth away. Someone walked this route. Not in the last few days, judging by the fresh growth creeping back from the edges, but often enough to leave a trace. One patch of growth, low on a rock face near the path, glowed a color he could not place, not blue-green, not yellow or red, but something between or outside, the categories his mother had given him. It did not pulse at all, so he noted it and kept walking. For the plant guide did not cover everything, and he was learning that already. The encyclopedia's corner found the same spot on his back with every downhill step, a hard point of pressure just left of his spine. He shifted the pack twice, and it did not help. The book had its own ideas about where it wanted to ride, and his back would have to accommodate them. He descended. The mountain above him thinned in the thickening air, the ridge line blurring, the granite shoulders disappearing into the gray. He looked back once to see the solar collector gone, swallowed by the clouds, the farm gone, and the ridge a suggestion, then a memory, then nothing. His hand found the flashlight on his belt, his father's flashlight, but he did not turn it on. He just felt the weight of it against his hip, the knurled grip warm from his body heat. Then he faced forward and kept walking. The path led down into a valley he could not see the bottom of, and the only sounds were his boots on wet rock and the steady, alien drip of a world that did not know he was in it.
Chapter Guild, Stories for Your Mind.